So hello and welcome back to the channel, and we continue our work on the Epic Games Store UI, and today we're gonna handle a really important part of it. We'll finally connect our beautiful forms to our API. And I got a question in a comment, how many parts are there left in the series? To be honest, I don't know. I treat it kind of as a challenge to see how far we can push it. There are many other interesting things I would like to talk about. So maybe in the nearest future, I will just keep on recording this series, but also provide you with different subjects and different recordings. We'll see about that. But now to our wonderful project. I will switch to frontend here. I will run it, and I will run the API and get a sip of coffee. No coffee is the best. Okay. What we need to do in the beginning is to figure out why we have some issues here. Okay. Because that installed for any reason. Okay, but what we have to do, nevertheless, in the front end is to add the React query. So let's add that. So what is a React query? React query. It's mainly used for the GraphQL, as far as I know, but it can also be used with HTTP requests, so the standard REST API, as we're dealing with here. And it's used to manage your state, but actually not in the way that Redux does, because it's, you can think of it kind of like a Redux, but for your for the data that you fetch from the API. So it handles caching, fetching of the data, updates, so forth and so on, right? We'll use it even in its most basic state, just because, well, that's a new toy for us to play with. So let's see, this is installed, and here this should run correctly now. I hope. Come on. Oh, I know what is going on. So basically what we have to do here is to go to our tsconfig and our tsconfig build. And as you can see now, this is the configuration for our TypeScript, for our API, but our frontend lives beside our API code. And what TypeScript will try to do inside of our API project is to also compile the frontend. So to make it work, we need to exclude that from compilation. So this folder shouldn't be compiled. And now it works. Okay, great. So we fixed that issue. We have React query installed. So I think it's time for us to actually try and log in. Let's go to the login form. And basically, the syntax of a React query is taken from GraphQL. So whenever you're trying to post, update, or delete something, you are performing a mutation. And every time you're trying to get data from the API, you're performing a query. Okay? Let's jump in, and maybe here we'll create our login mutation, and we'll use mutation, if I may. That should come from React query. So let's see, from React query, use mutation. And as you can see here, there are many hooks here, right? And you can read through this in the documentation. And we'll use mutation, and we'll have to pass a function here and some options. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to create new file here and call it auth API TS. And here we'll split the code in that way that the .api files are actually the ones performing the requests. Okay, so here's the place that will probably store our login request and our register request. Okay, but how to perform this? Well, we'll need some kind of a client. And if you know me, I tend to use Axios as a client because I know it pretty well, and it basically works for all of the use cases that I need and know. So let's install that. So that's gonna be npm install Axios and types for Axios. Okay, that was quick. And it is always good to have a common abstraction for your API. This is due to the fact that you may need to perform such tasks as queuing the requests, or performing the session renewal, or a common place, one place to handle API errors. That's why I'm gonna create, let's see, I'm gonna create API file here, and I'm gonna start by creating a class here. I'm gonna create a class, and this is basically the one and only place where I'm creating a class. I could also use an object here that would be pretty much the same. So we'll have the Axios instance here being our main HTTP client. Let me just import it. And we need also Axios instance type from Axios. And this should be uppercase. Okay. And here, instead of creating a constructor, I will create init function. I could do constructor too, but it's just my preference. So this Axios instance, we have to initialize it. Axios create, and I'm gonna pass base URL here, and the URL should be localhost 8080 because that's the port on which we're running API. HTTP localhost 8080, that's fine. And then we'll create functions that we'll use. So this is going to be the get function, and you have to pass URL here. Turn static, so that's going to be access instance get URL, but since we're using TypeScript, I want to know what is the type of our response. I mean, what do I expect there? So the response type can be passed here, making it a generic function, because get is also a generic function. So response type. Okay. The same should go for post. Status static post response type and data type, and the data type is undefined by default, so you can use the default value for generic types. As you can see, URL is a string, data, which is optional, should be of, let's make it pretty. Since this is taking more than one argument, I'm going to create interface post args, and I'm going to say that URL is of string type, post args, this is of t type, to make it generic, and data is optional t. Okay, that makes sense. Then I can say something like this, that here we have post args and they're of data type, meaning, so you can see I created what's going on? I created a generic type here. It's actually a little bit me talking about generic types. I created generic type because I don't know beforehand, before I use it somewhere else, what will be the type of a given argument. So I made it generic, and basically T is like the default annotation you do for the generic types. And then I said that this type will be used here. And then I use type I created, post args, here, but I passed the type as an argument to it. So as you can see, the T is becoming the data type. Okay? Therefore, I know here URL is a string, obvious, and the data, as you can see, is data type or undefined because it's optional. Okay? So that's your short take for the generic arguments. Okay, and this will call return API access instance post URL data, and here we're using the response type. Okay, and we should export this. Oh, and this is good. This is enough right now for our API abstraction. But one thing that we have to make sure of is to initialize it before we render the app. Okay, and we can do this in something like document, or maybe, yeah, document should be good. But there's also app. Okay, and I believe this might be a little bit more correct. Okay, so hear me out. This is basically our component did update. And this is the thing that is going to run after the first render, right? So what I can do is to create simple state here. And name it is ready. That is ready. Let's make it is app ready. Okay. And if the app is not ready, I will just return simple div with loading. You can do some kind of fancy loader here if you'd like. That is good. And here I'm gonna call app. I'm gonna call API init, and after that, actually maybe even after that, I'm gonna set is app ready and force it to render. And then when everything else renders, so basically our app renders, I know that our API was properly initialized. So that's done. Now, for our auth API, we will need two functions here. So let's create these, and that's gonna be login, and it's gonna be an async function. Okay, and we'll export it actually. And if I go to the login form, I know that on submit I should call the login, right? That's going to be our data login form input. So what I can do and what I should do is actually grab this interface, extract it here, use it here, okay, and export that. And why did I do it this way? Why didn't I export it from the component and bring it here, import it here? Well, that's because you should always try to stack up your dependencies so that the smallest or the simple things don't rely on the more complicated one. So it would be bad if I would have a simple function calling API here, depend on the module or something from the module coming from login form TSX component, which is, as you can tell, rather long and a little bit complicated. So try to import small things into bigger things rather than the other way around. Okay. And now I have just to re-import that. Okay. And now I can write my function. And this is going to be rather simple. So this is, let's not call it data because that's going to conflict a little bit. We'll call it form input, which makes sense. Okay. I can await API post. We need to specify the login response because that's the response type, and then the input type is a login form input again. And here, let's import API. Okay. And here, we need URL, and this is going to be auth login, and the data here is going to be form input. Okay, so we need to specify the response interface login response. If it's successful, we should get ID and an email at least, right? And we are passing only the partial URL here because it's going to be concatenated with that one. Okay, and that's the concatenated version of that string, meaning the localhost, and the part here is what is going to be used in the final request we perform with this call. Okay, so that should be it. Yeah, let's leave it at that for now. Next thing, so here I can call login because how the useMutation hook is working is you pass the request as a first parameter and then options as a second one. And one of the options, which is really cool, as you can see here, is what to do on success, what to do on mutate, and what to do on error. You can specify the retry options, retry delay, like that's more than enough for you. What we'll do is we'll set up on success here, and we'll just console log in. Okay, and this is incorrect, but that should be okay. So basically we're almost ready to perform the login request, so let's see that. This isn't going to work because we're running this on different port. So this is, yeah, that's the one. Come on, you can do it. Or maybe there's something wrong. Yeah, okay, so no query client said use query client provider to set one. So when using React query, the fact that you can use those hooks like use query or use mutation is due to the fact that there is a client, React query client, living in the context of your application. Meaning you have to set up a query client provider for the React query so that you can use those hooks. And that should be very easy, if I remember that correctly, because we should go to the app. And here, instead of using a fragment to wrap all that, we can wrap something, we can use something else. And that's going to be query client provider. One thing that we have to provide here is, of course, a client. Let me get rid of that. So the client, we have just created somewhere. Let's put it in. Let's put it in common. React query client.ts. And this is really easy. You just create one with default constructor. Don't need anything else for now. query client. This is new query client. You can provide empty options for now. Query client. And if we take a look at the constructor, you can set up the cache, the mutation cache, and some options. Like I believe you can pass the queries and mutations, and we're not doing that since we're not using GraphQL. Okay, so that should be done. And here I can pass React. How do I name this? Query client. Okay, that works too. Query client. Okay. That should fix our issue. Query client is not defined. Okay, let me just save this in that case. And okay, let me just reset that. Okay, so basically now we should be able to perform our requests. We have the query client in place, we've wrote the hook, we've wrote the connection to the API. One thing though that might be useful for us is to set up the DevTools for React Query, because if you go to the docs, you will come on, this is in quick start. Oh yeah, there's a section for that. There are separate DevTools for React Query Client, and there you can see the cache, the queries, the mutations, all of that stuff. So let me set that up. We will go, this is fine here. Just do React Query. Okay, you're not helping me. React Query Dev Tools, please. Okay. We have to import that from React. I can't type really. React Query Dev Tools. Okay, here it is. React Query Dev Tools. And then we can make it pop. React Query Dev Tools. And we can use them now, and you will see a slight change in the UI, because it will automatically render that flower for you. And here you can see all the logs and so forth and so on. We'll see it being filled up soon. So let's try something and let's see what happens. I don't know. Let's try something that is definitely incorrect. Okay, so nothing happens, and that's because creating the mutation isn't enough. As you can see, it's not being used. What we want to do is here, go logging mutation, mutate data. And as you can tell, there are two things here. Let me just show this really quick to you. There's mutate and mutate async. One where both will fire up the on success, I believe, but the mutate async, well, obviously can be resolved as a promise, because it is returning a promise since it's being asynchronous, right? But we'll stick with the let's say synchronous one, but It only differs in the fact that it doesn't return the promise. It will perform the asynchronous call just fine. Okay, so let's try that again. And behold, what we have is a call that is marked as a course error. So cross-origin resource sharing error. And the problem, if you ever hit that problem in your API, well, there's nothing really you can do here on the front-end part. This is solely the issue with the backend, because this is the information that your backend is trying to protect your API, your data, from being somehow mutated by the request coming from the unknown origin. And it would be totally fine if we're performing this request on the same domain. Meaning, for example, if we have Facebook as a front-end app, and then there's a Facebook API, these two can communicate no problem because they share the common domain. In our case, well, in localhost, that's not going to be the case. So we have to go to the backend and fix it a little bit. So I'm going to go to the main here. And what I believe I use is to run the course module here. So we can just take the app and call enable course. Okay. And we have to specify origin. Okay. And this is HTTP, sorry, localhost 4041. Okay, cool. Try that again. Okay, if you happen to have that error, there are two things that you should do. You should stop your server. And I don't know why this is happening in the latest NestJS. And then after that, remove this folder. Okay, and run it again. The distribution folder will be recreated for you. And then I believe, and I hope, it should work. Okay, successfully started. Try that again. Okay, yeah, we got this, and we got an authorized error. So this is really good. One thing we have to do is to actually handle that error. Okay, so this is from unauthorized message unauthorized. So let's go to Auth API and let's try catch it. And for now, let's try to log error. What do we have inside? Message and status code. Message. Okay. In this case, unauthorized means, well, you provided wrong credentials, right? So let's see. I don't know why the logged in is triggered here. This is undefined, and the message is here. One thing that I like to do, if I don't know the structure of an error, is just call JSON stringify on it. Okay, so let's see. There's a message. There's a name stack. config headers. I believe we should be able to find the error response here. Yeah, there's the response, finally. So we have a status and status tags. I'm gonna just get the status tags from there, but we can do, if this has error response status code, I should be able to catch it here actually. So let's see, on error, it should have an error, and the code should live as a status code here. Let's see where we can catch it there. 43, this is undefined. But it's there, it's there. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Do you have response here? Yeah, status, not the status code. Okay. So what we can do here is to do something like this. Let's see, how do we name it? Wrong our English is so hard. Let's call it wrong credentials error, and this should suffice for now. And we're gonna use state that's false, and here error response status equal to 401. I'm gonna set wrong credentials error to be true. Okay, and we also have to reset this here before the request. Makes sense? And then we can use that here. So wrong credentials error. Okay, and then we'll provide a helper text to be wrong credentials. That should be enough. Also add this here. Come on. Can always adjust this later. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. This is wrong because it's rendering already. So we have to change this a little bit. Hope that helps. Yep. So only if this error is set to true, render that. But this is possible due to the fact that the Boolean logic in JavaScript is a little bit tricky. Okay, this is not showing. Let's try putting something here. Here, this is obviously wrong. And we have that handled. Okay, yeah, great. So in this episode, we connected our login form. I decided to go with that because that form is a little bit easier and doesn't require any changes in the API. In the next episode, we will connect the register form to our API, and then the full authorization process should be in place, meaning you will be able to register and you will be able to log in, and we can finally move to the meat and bones, the inside of our app. So thank you for that. Join, subscribe, comment, give me a like. Keep on learning, keep on grinding, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.